And hopefully one other person will join us in the interim.
Perfectly acceptable.
Is that all right with everybody else?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Sounds good.
thank you.
Didn't we already discuss the tour, or haven't we already talked about that?
Here- I'm not positive that everybody does, because we have people that miss, we have this committee, we have the advisory committee and the board. Has this committee already talked about, everybody already talked about that tour?
I thought we talked about it, but I could have mistaken it for the advisory committee.
It may have been the advisory committee, actually, because I think we talked about it, and then at the very end, once you finished, you had some nice slides that pretty much reiterated a lot of what we had talked about. And
Yeah,
somebody
that's true.
said something about like, hey, it'd have been nice to see those slides when we were talking about this.
Yeah.
Well, how about if I jump through a couple of these slides real quick, just as a quick reminder? And then we can kind of start talking about the next progression in that, which would be drywall and stuff. Is that okay?
Sounds
Yeah,
good
that
to
sounds
me.
good.
Yes.
Okay, Diane, I'm going to share my screen on the
Perfect.
tour slides. Okay, what do you guys see? See the construction and
Recommendations,
demolition slide?
construction and demolition.
Okay, let me open that up to slideshow. Get bigger for you guys. I bet that didn't help at all, did it?
Stay the same.
Yeah, it's because it jumped to the different monitor.
Life gets more complicated.
Please. All right, now should be able to see that much bigger.
A little bit, yes.
Okay, so
Read it. It's not the size, it's the color of the gray one.
Yeah.
yeah, so it was grayed out, and the bottom one was grayed out to point out that we're going to focus on the center one. So what we were going to talk about first is this reuse of material in road construction and the efforts to use asphalt shingles. And even a little bit past that was the use of recycled concrete in that material. So that was going to be the focus of our tour, which the first part was our shingles. We know that they've been traditionally used. We know that they fell out of favor with the Kentucky Department of Transportation. We know that from our tour that we confirmed that shingles don't really add to the cost. Shingles don't really hurt the quality. You know, you've got some things with binder adjustment and rejuvenators. It's more technical. We talked a whole lot about other possibilities from the road. I think I got an echo. Is that anybody else here?
Yeah. Must be somebody that just joined. Who joined last?
Is that better? There we go. Okay, so and then we learned that there was no reason that we couldn't use recycled concrete in road base. So that is basically that tour, and then the concrete. You know, it's less expensive than virgin material for customers, which is huge. We just have to get the engineers to be a little bit more comfortable with it. We need to educate government and construction industry that that's a key to making some of this stuff work. And that was pretty much the presentation. What I will follow up with, and this is kind of really some good news that dropped in at the right time. The city of Louisville, and I've been working with the Office of Sustainability on LEED for cities. It's a LEED certification process. Like you would have a company that would get a certain LEED certification for a building. Well, they also have LEED certification for cities, and Louisville is working to become a LEED certified city. Not sure where we'll end up at gold, silver, bronze, however. But one of those things that is a part of that is construction and demolition material. And the first step that we have to do is that Metro government needs to start tracking all of its projects, all of its road projects, MSD projects, water projects, construction, renovation, and all of these projects for the amount of material that's being generated and how much is being recovered. And it's a good thing, because what that means is that Metro is going to make a commitment, we believe, to start recovering all this stuff. So to do that, you have to have, it goes back to whether or not that there's a need for having a processing facility. This makes it more likely that we have a need for a processing facility. So it kind of worked really well. I met with our facilities people this morning, and I met with our engineers, and we started talking about concrete and shingles in the paving again. And there was some lifted eyebrows when we started talking about, well, you know that recycled concrete is cheaper than regular. And you can start to see some interest peaking, because it was, saving some money might be a really good thing. So on the side of those types of things, and especially when it comes to road base and concrete and shingles, I think that the timing was perfect, that matched up with our tour and what we're trying to do. So I think that we're going to be jump starting through Metro government, which was one of the goals in that lower right-hand screen, was education of government and construction industry is key. This works right there along with it. So that is in process. Now, we did want to start talking about the drywall, and some of the drywall things that I know kind of coming off the top of my head a little bit is that it takes special equipment to be able to recycle it. And what has to take place is it goes through a process. Let me do something real quick. Maybe I can show it to you a little bit better. Oh, gotta get rid of the commercial. So would you guys want to see a short video? It's about 6 minutes on drywall recycling. And I think it's a start of an education as to what this process could be. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay with me.
Okay.
Awesome. And I hope this is the right video.
Can you turn around to see if that helps? I can hardly hear.
I can hardly hear.
It's on mute.
Is that better?
No,
Yeah.
Are you not able to hear it at all?
I can't
not
hear it
sure.
at all.
Well,
It was,
now it's muted, but before it was just quiet and spotty.
okay, I think that it's probably gonna be more of a commercial as much as you can watch and see what this process looks like. And I've seen it and I can kind of describe it to a certain degree.
You've got the volume down, so we don't hear anything right now, really.
Yeah, Pete, I think you have to share your sound. We're seeing your screen, but you're not sharing your computer sound. So that's an option when you share a video, you can select share sound.
Are you guys getting anything from this? Not
It's
really.
very attractive.
I think she's
Yeah,
muted.
technically, I apologize that it's not working right, and I don't even think it's a great video for what I really needed to show you. More or less that, let me quit sharing. More or less, you have clean drywall and you have dirty drywall. Dirty meaning basically from the demolition of buildings, it's been painted, or it's got foreign matter in it and stuff like that. That makes it hard to recycle. The industry right now, the clean drywall is what people are wanting. So that when we talk about a construction and demolition processing facility, that's what makes loads from construction much more valuable than ones from deconstruction. It's not painted, it's easy. So what has to take place is it goes into the shredder and it breaks that drywall up into much smaller pieces, which is separating the inner powder from the paper coating. And that powder will come out and you can see it's a very dusty process. So it has to be inside. And that material is 100% recyclable. The inside of the drywall is 100% recyclable. The paper on the outside is recyclable, but it's less recyclable. So in essence, when you do drywall recycling, it is really probably 90% of it is recoverable. So that's the good part about it. The bad part about it is you have to be selective in your sources. And then you have to have a end use, which is here in our area, really not all that strong. Going back to what Matt Smith, and I don't see Matt here on this call today, but he can definitely use it. He's very interested in drywall recycling and what it would take to do it. I think it is perfect for an amendment to compost or to go into for agricultural uses as a soil amendment. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think that our biggest hurdle in making something and starting to look at drywall is how do we recover it? And then jump starting the end use part of that. And I think we would have to rely on the composters around to kind of take the lead on trying to find and get with those end uses, because they probably already have the contacts, possibly with some of the farmers that would utilize it. So drywall recycling is probably one of the bigger things that we need to overcome or to get. And that's kind of a short overview on it. From
Just a question. I would think that if the people doing the construction were prudent in their estimates of what they needed for supplies, there wouldn't be a great deal of clean drywall available.
There are estimators that on general industry that will tell you how much material is generally generated per square foot. It's more than what I would have thought. I think a lot of that has to do with the type of construction, obviously, but when you start to get into more of your architectural drywall, you have more cutoff than you typically would. And, you know, let's face it, I mean, the workers are going to grab a full sheet instead of using that half sheet a lot of times when they really shouldn't. But there's always opportunities to reduce, which is something that we really need to an education with the construction industry and work with them on.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Go
ahead.
We lost your voice.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. The only end use currently for drywall is compost or soil mixture.
It's not, it can actually be used in concrete as well. There are multiple uses for it. And I think that we talked about it at one of our previous meetings, all the different.
Because I think Matt was saying that the only thing that's currently being recycled in the drywall industry is manufacturer scrap right now, which is kind of what you're talking about, either coming from the company that produces the drywall or coming from, like you said, new construction where it's just the brand new pieces that they're not using or scrap. That's anything that's been on a wall or is in that's already been constructed is not recyclable currently.
It is, but I don't think that it's a little bit more difficult because you got to get that, the paper coating on it doesn't come off as easy. I think that's part of the issue. And I'm not a drywall recycler. And what we probably need to do is have a company that, you know, that's what they do to kind of give us a little bit on it. I think in the chat, that Diane, you say that this is a YouTube, maybe it's part of.
It is. It's a pretty quick one. They're selling equipment, but it's pretty nice to see how it goes through the thing.
To do another commercial.
Do we have any estimates or idea how much of that could potentially be generated? Because to be quite honest with you, I'm somewhat like Sandra is saying that unless you have a factory right in your city that's creating a large amount of excess or scrap that you can directly recycle, I feel like if it's a new home construction, even a, let's say a good size apartment complex building, what have you, and being in the dumpster business, this is what goes through my head. But so the amount of scrap drywall they're generating would have to be enough for them to separate it out, to like have a separate dumpster or some kind of separate container for that excess drywall to go in. And then you have to generate enough to where it's worth renting a dumpster for that. Yeah, I just think that seems like a stretch or an awful lot of scrap. I mean, I can envision someone in a new home or something like that, maybe having, you know, a pickup truck load or a small amount of excess drywall, but I just don't know that they would have a huge amount that would be worth them separating it out or not putting it in their, again, their regular construction debris dumpster. But
And
not saying that can't be done or it's not something to look into. It's just, I think it presents a whole lot bigger, greater issue when the only recyclability is something coming off essentially a brand new product or brand new drywall.
I agree with you to a big degree. I think that either it stays source separated at the point of generation of the construction project. Might not be good for a single family home that's being built standalone in a neighborhood. But if you're building a subdivision of new homes, it may. Or if you're building an apartment complex, it may. So it might not lend itself really well to construction and demolition processing, but it may be there in certain. Let's put it this way: we kind of talked about it. What kind of loads would you want to come into a construction and demolition debris processing facility to make it work? And new construction loads is where that was at. So if you was doing an apartment complex, and instead of having to sort your drywall, your metal, and some of those types of things, if you could still put it into one dumpster, you knew it was still good, clean drywall along with the other recoverables, it still might be worth it at a construction and demolition debris processing facility. So maybe it would be that in the future, as a first step towards creating a construction and demolition debris processing facility, you say that only new construction has to use it for the first 5 years or something until it kind of gets its feet underneath of it. So I think that you can start to tailor how you would try to start a facility by targeting certain segments of the industry with the more valuable material. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I
Sort
think
of.
it does make sense as far as kind of how we were talking about creating products that you want in the dumpster, that you want to come to the C&D recycling facility. And if you can include drywall in that, that's just one more thing that they can use to fill up the dumpster or one more thing that they can put in there. So I agree, or I see where you're coming from. So you may say you're taking new construction loads, and that load may be a fourth of it is old drywall scrap that can be recovered along with some concrete or some other shingles, some other recyclables.
Pete,
Are we talking about when we're talking about bringing it in, are we talking about bringing it into a public facility or a private facility?
Preferably a private facility, if any way possible. I would think that would be, there's a lot of different ways to set up a place like that, and they do it all over the country. There's so many different ways. It could be a public-private partnership, publicly funded to build the place and privately operated. It could be totally private. It can be fully government. It just depends upon once we get to where we can really start discussing the possibility of a facility. At that point, I think we have to decide how best to fund it and operate it.
Pete, this is Bruce. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Do we know where the nearest, uh, I guess, construction demo recycling facility is located?
I do not.
Is that something that we can find out if there are any that are permitted within the state of Kentucky?
We can. I believe that there's one or two, but you know, just like we talked about in a lot of our stuff, they tend to focus on certain materials. It's not a mixed load type of facility or fully mixed load type of facility.
So what is our goal on this topic? A piecemeal approach or a full-fledged approach?
Well, from my understanding is that we're going to try to take the most common materials that would go into a C&D processing facility, ensure that they have end uses in Louisville Metro, and that there's a market for it. And at that point, if we have those materials covered, and it's the majority of the material that would come into this type of facility, then we can start to discuss the possibility of having one sited in Louisville. But as of now, I think we've covered our shingles. I believe that we've covered the concrete, which were two big components. Drywall was the next big one. And I think probably one of the keys to making one of these facilities work. So that's kind of where we're at is can we get to this? Can we find a home for drywall? You know, I'm not too much worried about the cardboard and that type of material, some of the rigid plastics. There's homes for that. That's an easy thing. It's really the biggest components that we need to worry about. Do I understand it the way everybody else does?
I believe we're all on the same page, and because
Oh, sorry. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. This is Sam Troutman. I hopped on a little bit late, but I was looking at my directory and there are 3 C&D recyclers that I have on my list in Kentucky. There is one in Henderson, Kentucky, one in Walton, Kentucky, and then there's one in Bowling Green called TPM. And I also wanted to mention I can send Pete the link or the information for this place, but there is a paper, like a specific, like paper gypsum specific recycling facility, and I believe it is in Pennsylvania, which is like a long ways away. But that was a while back when I was researching. I know that there were a few paper gypsum specific recycling facilities.
They pull it
So,
out specific because of the dust.
I'm
Thank you
sorry,
very much for
pardon?
that.
I don't think we quite heard you, Pete.
Oh, no, I was just saying, thank you very much, Samantha. I was not aware of the gypsum paper recycling up in Pennsylvania, but I understand that it is not necessarily treated just like regular paper because you can't clean off enough of the dust to make it work. So it does have to be a specific facility that handles the paper
Okay.
fraction.
Okay. Yeah, I can do more research and send you information if you would like.
All about it. Please do.
Okay. All right, cool.
Okay. So I did pull up a couple other things that were uses for drywall. One was it's a good for plant nutrients, improves soil properties, reduces toxins in agricultural runoff. It's an additive for animal bedding. It's a soil remediation and stabilization product. It's a bulk waste solidifier and stabilizer. It can be used as fillers and dilutants in plastics, adhesives, paints, wood filler. It can be used in water clarification, compost additive, and it can be used on the lawn and garden. So there is a long list of things that it can be used for.
Does it say what the chemical composition is?
I believe gypsum is its own
Element?
element. Yeah. I am pretty dang sure that that is the case.
It's actually referred to as a hydrous calcium sulfate. It's CaCO4, calcium sulfate.
I'm not sure if we have a drywall manufacturer. Where is our closest drywall manufacturer?
I think it's for some reason, I'm thinking it's in North Carolina, and that's who actually sends their drywall to the one in Pennsylvania, sends their excess. So there aren't too many around.
There's a drywall manufacturer in Carrollton, Kentucky, Pete.
There is one, Carrollton.
Yes.
Or if we can talk to them just to kind of get their input on something like this. Greg? You're muted, Greg.
Yeah, sorry, I did it. In that video, they showed a gypsum plant sending their stuff to the recycling plant, and then construction, people sending it to him. But to me, after you're saying there's so much value to this recycled gypsum, why doesn't the plants, and this is something we need to look into, why don't the plants themselves, sell it to somebody directly or somebody to use it? It seems like it's quite a valuable commodity from what you're saying.
Well, value is a question. I don't know exactly what the material value of it is. I'm sure that any
Because of hauling and stuff, yeah.
new manufacturer, if they had it sitting right there, it would be great. But
yeah.
the big part about it is probably going to be transportation and how far away we are from one of those facilities. So if we can't get it back into new drywall, the next best thing is the soil amendments and materials like that.
Anything else?
That's all I have on drywall. And it's also, just the good news that we got that Metro's looking at C&D processing all of its material. So that's a good thing.
Looking at my notes, we did not talk about our trip to the laboratories because we have not had a meeting since we went there. So it was the advisory committee, and probably we should say something about our trip, those of us who were there.
Sounds good.
Who wants to start?
I think a lot of what was covered in the trip was covered pretty well in Pete's slides, or that Pete just presented the slides. I think a lot of the main overview that I gathered, or that I think is positive, is that there's no reason that they can't use recycled shingles and asphalt. It's just a matter of fine tuning the process, I guess, a little bit. But again, I thought the slides that Pete just kind of showed and went over covered quite a bit of the main content of the meeting.
I agree with you, because I think that one of the things that I found very helpful was how willing everybody was to answer questions to those of us, unlike you, Adam, who don't do this for a living. And I thought that they were very clear at explaining the different things that are taking place in the political arena and in the recycling terms of what we're talking about. And I think Pete captured that on his slides. Greg, did you want to say something?
No, no.
Yeah, I think the one other thing that I would add, in case anybody hasn't heard it, is the fact that the state is going to be going to a performance-based testing of the material. And I think that in the end, I think that will be the thing that's going to convince people that it's okay to use shingles. And in fact, I think it will help the asphalt industry be a little bit more creative in things that they can use. And I was really excited about their interest in using plastics, recovered plastics in asphalt. And I thought that that was really encouraging because, you know, those 3 through 7s are the things that we have more difficult time recycling. And if they can go into asphalt, I mean, there's plenty. I believe that there would be a lot of use for it, and it could solve the industry issue of some of the plastics that we have left over. And I thought that was good. And also some of the other things that they talked about, which was even using porcelain in asphalt. So there was glass, there was porcelain. The issue with porcelain is you don't want 10, 15 different colors of asphalt out there. So you had to be concerned a little bit about the color of the porcelain, but with that being that all they have to do is meet a performance standard, it will take away that question about durability when you're adding the shingles in there. And I think it will also prevent someone from getting a little overzealous with trying to use too much shingles because it's going to show up in that performance test. And I think that will build the confidence back up, and now we'll have shingle recycling taking place again in Metro.
Maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the people that we had talking to us who were so informative, none of them were actually from the state who are constructing the standards. I wonder if it would be helpful to have somebody literally from the government perspective come and talk to us.
And I think that they gave us some names, but I thought that they were a little bit questionable about that because they felt like that those guys really don't have time for us. That was kind of the take that I got from it.
Well, they may not, but they might want to take a trip for whatever reason to Louisville and could incorporate us into it. Or they may live here and they don't want to go to work that day. I mean, usually, I don't think it hurts to ask is what I'm saying.
Understood.
Pete, well, I have one comment on what you just talked about, where it allows the asphalt producer the flexibility to design their own mix as long as it adheres to the performance standards. I'm worried that will not encourage them to use recycled product in their material. I'm worried that if you give them the choice, they're going to go with what they know. They're going to go with what works well for them. They're going to go with what they know works and does what they need it to do. I'm afraid that without providing some type of incentive or some type of a reason to use recycled material in their asphalt, they're not going to do it.
It's funny that you say this, Adam, because I think that's exactly where the conversation went when we was there. Because then we started talking about whether or not that there needs to be a requirement in the specs for a certain amount of shingle, or whether or not that you give them an incentive to get the job if they use recycled material. And I remember Sandra and you kind of talking about those differences on whether or not that we would be better with an incentive-based system or whether or not we would have a mandate for a certain percentage. Do you guys remember that? Or am I?
No, I do.
somewhat- I remember.
Why not go with both?
I think
Well,
that's,
depending on how you approach it, that could happen.
Yeah.
We're not there yet, though.
Yeah.
yeah, and the suggestion that we have like a minimum, and the suggestion was that we came up with a recommended mix that people could use in Louisville Metro, and, you know, trying to get the small cities, trying to get Metro, and started to build it there. And it would translate into more confidence and come into the state level. But having a mix, a recommended mix, and maybe the incentive is if you use this mix, then you get 5 points on your bid. You know, I think maybe that is a way to go. So yeah, we can use both.
I'm just, like I said, I know when they were using shingles, and I know that now they're not using shingles, and their incentive then was cost savings because of the price of liquid AC, or because it had gone so high, and they were using a unresponsible amount in that mix to increase that cost savings. Well, when you get to where you're using a responsible amount, the amount of cost savings is greatly reduced. And then you get to the point where they're like, is it even worth putting this in here? We're not making that much, we're not saving that much money. Our guys complain a little bit about having to set it up, provide a bin, enter it into the mix. I'm a little worried that without having some set standards, that nothing will change. But again, I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. We're definitely getting a better understanding of what can be done. It's just a matter of how do you make that process happen.
There was a suggestion early on when we were talking about C&D processing, and it was that that the district could consider hiring a consultant. I'm not real sure what the right name for it is, but Scott Smith of Smith Management, I think, was recommended, kind of say if you had a product that you kind of wanted to get people to use in the state or locally, that he would pay him to be that advocate to go and say, look, this is what you guys need to be using. He more or less a salesman or a lobbyist to whoever to be able to get that done. Is that something that we should be considering? I don't know what something
know
like
that I think we're there yet. I don't know that we're to the point where that we have something specific to sell.
I think the mix design is what you sell. You come up with the mix
we don't
design
have one.
that includes the amount of recycled materials or a percentage or what you're looking to get into it. And again, it can be small. And then that's what you're lobbying for is, hey, let's switch to this mix design. Let's use this mix design. You're getting some shingles in there. You're getting porcelain. You're getting whatever plastics, whatever your goal is to get in the mix design, or a percentage of any of it. You could just say, I want 2% of any recycled product to go into the mix. And then the asphalt company can choose what they prefer to use maybe. But I feel like if we're trying to sell something, we're trying to sell a certain mix design that includes a recycled product.
One of the components of what you're talking about is we have not talked to anybody who does mixes yet at a specific level. We've had people talk around that issue on, I mean, everybody has. We haven't had anybody who actually mixes and puts things together.
The one guy at the meeting, that's what he was said, he's a chemist or he's a designer. And I
Right.
think that's what he does, is create mixed designs. So I think that's kind of what he does. But it's just a matter of him coming up with a design that he knows will work and is suitable, but it also includes some recycling.
I think that he is the guy to do it. I do worry about getting a mixed design from him
A
and
specific
whether or
vendor.
not that, yeah, and whether
Yeah.
or not that complicates things in the procurement section. I'm not sure how to get around that.
You could
And
talk, we could talk to more than a single person. We could talk to 3 people who perform that function.
I think that's a good idea. If we can get the manufacturers to agree upon a percentage, I think that then we would be in business and we wouldn't be hurting ourselves later in the procurement process. Is that the way I understand you, Sandra?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
You might be able to get the guy who we originally talked to. I'm sorry, I can't think of his name offhand. But
Scott
maybe,
Plyer.
yeah, to come up with his design that he likes or he recommends. But then, like Sandra's saying, will you take that to a couple other asphalt plants and say, hey, does this look good to you? Is there anything you would change? Do you feel like this or this would need to be altered? And maybe you catch a couple other asphalt plants and say, no, that looks really good. That's something we can make and do. And then you've got something.
I'll get with you.
You want any more discussion on this?
The
I'm
one
sorry.
thing that we're eventually going to have to get to, Sandra, is the consideration of the economics of the process. So once we get the mixed design in place that we want to go with, then we can also get input from the 3 vendors as what that does to the economics. And
I
see,
totally agree with you.
Yes.
I mean, because
Yes.
that's the bottom line on every initiative is look at the economics and whether
Mhm.
it's going to be sustainable.
I don't disagree that we always need to look at the economics, but I think that day they were fairly clear that there isn't an economic disincentive to do this. It was a non-factor in this regard.
Well, but they weren't how the product gets to them, we put into the asphalt. I mean, there's economics involved at every portion of the process. And Adam keeps talking to us about the beginning portion where we're talking about separate dumpsters, separate sorting. So I appreciate what you're saying, Bruce. Okay, we're almost finished, and the only thing we have, and we do have a quorum now, the only thing that we've got left are the minutes from our July meeting. Have you all had a chance to look at them? And if you have, are there any things that you'd like to change in any way, shape, or form? Hearing nothing, I'll take a motion for minutes July 13th meeting.
So moved.
Adam and Bruce, are you seconding?
Sure, yeah, that'll work.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes of the July 13th meeting have passed. And now we're at the portion of our agenda where we're asking for public input. Is there any public input?
I'd like to just ask a question.
Certainly.
Karen. Does anybody remember back? This is old timers, I guess. I thought we had a guy that did asphalt shingling recycling. He was not from the state. He wanted to come in, was willing to build a plant, and his thing was the sound barriers on all the highways. In other words, they build them out of concrete, which reflects noise. He was going to add shingles, which they do in other states, which absorbs noise. So it was a superior product. It was a better price. I mean, again, everything was good, but all I remember is the state transportation people were not interested because they had their own suppliers that supplied their stuff for it themselves. Does anybody remember that? Is that worth pursuing again?
I don't recall that.
It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I thought it wouldn't have been before your time, Pete. I know it goes pretty far back, so I don't know if there's anybody else on here that goes that far back, but it was I don't know if I've still got the paperwork, but it was a definite great sounding thing. And it just hit a brick wall because they were like, well, we buy our concrete from our people, and they had no interest in buying anything from anybody else. But he was willing to come in and build a plant to help with that. So anyway, that's a great, the shingles, they absorb sound, which is another advantage on a road, I think, even too. But those concrete sound barrier walls are just silly. They build them out of solid concrete, and it knocks the sound up into the air on somebody else. But anyway, I guess I'll try and find it. I'll try and find something out of it if I can, but that's something else to keep in mind. Thank you.
Please.
Is there anything else for our meeting? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Adam, second. Marie is a second. All those in favor? Okay, anybody opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.